The spotlight hit her face, and in that moment, everything went silent. There she was, 8-year-old Maya Johnson, standing on the stage of Carnegie Hall, her small fingers poised over the piano keys. In the audience, two white faces stared back at her, through tears. They never thought they'd shed. The same people who just 6 months earlier had called her music noise and told her foster mother she'd never amount to anything. But how did we get here? How does a little black girl from the south side of Chicago end up proving wrong the very people who were supposed to protect her? This is a story about talent that refuses to be silenced, about music that becomes the voice of justice, and about the moment when prejudice meets undeniable genius. What you're about to hear will challenge everything you think you know about foster care, about racial bias, and about the power of one child's unwavering belief in herself. Thank you for clicking on this video and choosing to spend your time with this incredible story. If you believe in the power of music to change hearts and minds, please hit that subscribe button right now and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps me bring more inspiring stories like Maya's to light. Maya Johnson was 7 years old when she first heard Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major drifting through the thin walls of her grandmother's apartment. Her grandmother, Essie May, was dying of lung cancer, but she still managed to keep that old radio playing classical music 24 hours a day. "Grandmama, what's that sound?" Maya had asked, pressing her ear against the speaker. "That's the sound of freedom, baby girl," Essie May had whispered, her voice already growing weak. "That's what happens when your soul talks through your fingers." Maya lived with her grandmother in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment on Chicago's South Side. Her mother had disappeared when she was 3, leaving behind only a note that said, "I can't do this anymore." Her father was never in the picture. Essie May, despite being on a fixed income and battling illness, had taken Maya in without question. The apartment was small, but it was filled with love. Essie May would spend her evenings teaching Maya about music, pointing out the different instruments, explaining how composers like Beethoven and Mozart had changed the world with their art. Maya absorbed every word like a sponge absorbing water. "You hear that piano, Maya? That man's fingers are dancing on those keys like they're telling a story. And someday, baby girl, your fingers are gonna tell stories too." Maya didn't have a piano. They couldn't afford one. But she had something else. An incredible ear for music and fingers that seemed to know exactly where to go, even on an imaginary keyboard. She would sit at the kitchen table, her small hands moving across the surface, as if keys were there, her eyes closed, lost in the music only she could hear. Essie May noticed. She always noticed. "Maya, come here, child." Maya would run to her grandmother's bedside, where Essie May would take her small hands in her own weathered ones. "These hands, baby girl, these hands are special. They're gonna take you places. I could never go." But Essie May's health was declining rapidly. The cancer was winning, and both of them knew it. The hospice nurse who came by twice a week would shake her head sadly when she thought Maya wasn't looking. Time was running out. It was a cold Tuesday in February when everything changed. Maya came home from school to find her grandmother unconscious on the living room floor. The paramedics worked for 20 minutes. But Essie May Johnson was gone. At 7 years old, Maya Johnson was completely alone in the world. The funeral was small. A few neighbors, the hospice nurse, and Maya, wearing a black dress that was too big for her tiny frame. As they lowered Essie May's casket into the ground, Maya felt something inside her break that she didn't think would ever heal. "What's going to happen to me now, Mrs. Patterson?" she asked, the social worker who had appeared at the funeral. Mrs. Patterson, a kind black woman in her 50s, knelt down to Maya's level. "We're going to find you a good home, sweetheart. A family who will love you and take care of you." But finding a family for a 7-year-old black girl proved more difficult than expected. Maya spent 3 weeks in a group home, sleeping in a room with 5 other children, all of them wondering when their real lives would begin. Finally, Mrs. Patterson came with news. "Maya, I have a family for you. The Hendersons. They're good people. They have experience with foster children, and they want to meet you." Maya packed her few belongings, some clothes, her grandmother's radio, and a picture of Essie May, and climbed into Mrs. Patterson's car. The Henderson house was in Naperville, a predominantly white suburb 40 minutes outside of Chicago. It was huge compared to her grandmother's apartment, a 2-story colonial with a perfectly manicured lawn and a 3-car garage. Richard and Patricia Henderson met them at the door. Richard was a tall, thin man with graying hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He worked as an accountant. Patricia was shorter, with blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun. She taught third grade at the local elementary school. "Maya, welcome to your new home," Patricia said, her voice cheerful but somehow distant. They gave her a tour of the house. Her room was upstairs, painted in soft pink with white furniture. It was beautiful, but it felt cold. Nothing like the warm, cramped space she'd shared with her grandmother. "We have some rules here, Maya," Richard explained as they sat in the living room. "We believe in structure and discipline. Dinner is at 6 sharp, homework time is from 7 to 8:30, and lights out at 9 o'clock. We expect you to keep your room clean, help with chores, and, most importantly, to be grateful for this opportunity." Maya nodded, not really understanding what he meant by opportunity. "We want you to know that we've fostered 12 children over the years," Patricia added. "We know how to help children adjust and become productive members of society." That first night, Maya lay in her new bed, staring at the ceiling. She pulled her grandmother's radio close to her chest and turned it on low. The classical music filled the silence, and for a moment, she could almost hear Essie Mae's voice. "That's the sound of freedom, baby girl." But her freedom felt very far away. The first few weeks at the Henderson house were an adjustment. Maya tried her best to follow the rules, to be the grateful child they expected her to be. She started at the local elementary school, where she was one of only 3 black children in her grade. At school, she was quiet, polite, and got excellent grades. Her teachers liked her. She never caused trouble, but at home, something was building inside her that she couldn't quite name. It started with the music. Maya had always hummed to herself, little melodies that came to her naturally. At her grandmother's house, this had been encouraged. Essie Mae would smile and ask her to hum louder so she could hear better. But at the Henderson house, humming was considered disruptive. "Maya, please stop that noise during homework time," Patricia would say sharply. "Maya, we don't hum at the dinner table," Richard would add. The word noise stung. Maya remembered how her grandmother had called music the sound of freedom, but to the Hendersons, her music was just noise. One day, Maya was in the living room after school, waiting for homework time to begin. She noticed the piano in the corner, a beautiful black baby grand that gleamed under the afternoon sunlight. "Mrs. Henderson, can I play the piano?" Maya asked. Patricia looked up from her papers. "Oh, sweetheart, that piano is very expensive. It's really just for decoration. Besides, you don't know how to play. But I think I could learn. My grandmother always said I had musical hands." Richard overheard from the kitchen. "Maya, we appreciate your interest, but piano lessons are very expensive, and frankly, we think your time would be better spent focusing on your academics. Music is a nice hobby, but it's not practical for someone in your situation." "What do you mean, my situation?" Maya asked, though she was beginning to understand. "Well, honey," Patricia said, her voice taking on that tone that adults use when they think they're being kind but are actually being cruel. "You need to be realistic about your future. You're a foster child. You need skills that will help you get a job and be independent. Music is, well, it's not realistic for someone like you." The words echoed in Maya's head for days. But Maya couldn't stop the music that lived inside her. When the Hendersons weren't around, she would sneak into the living room and put her fingers on the piano keys. She wouldn't press them, she was too afraid of making sound, but she would position her hands the way she imagined a real pianist would. And slowly, quietly, she began to figure out which keys made which sounds. One afternoon, while the Hendersons were grocery shopping, Maya couldn't resist anymore. She pressed one key, then another. The sound was beautiful, clear and pure in a way that made her heart race. She found middle C, then D, then E. Her grandmother's radio had taught her enough about music that she could recognize the pattern. Within an hour, she was picking out simple melody. She was so lost in the music that she didn't hear the car pull into the driveway. "Maya, what are you doing?" Patricia's voice cut through the air like a knife. Maya's hands flew off the keys as if they'd been burned. I'm sorry, Maya stammered. You were just what? Touching something that doesn't belong to you? Playing with an expensive instrument that you could damage?" Richard appeared behind his wife. "Maya, we're very disappointed. We specifically told you that the piano wasn't a toy." "But I wasn't playing with it," Maya said, her voice getting smaller. "I was making music. Real music. Listen." She reached toward the keys again, wanting to show them the melody she'd discovered. but Patricia grabbed her wrist. Enough, you're grounded for a week. No TV, no radio, and absolutely no touching the piano. Do you understand? Maya nodded, tears burning her eyes. That night, she lay in bed clutching her grandmother's radio. The volume turned so low she could barely hear it. But even at a whisper, the music spoke to her soul, and in that moment, she made a decision that would change everything. She was going to find a way to play music, no matter what it took. Maya's opportunity came from an unexpected source, Mrs. Rodriguez, the school music teacher. During lunch one day, Maya was sitting alone in the cafeteria, humming softly to herself as she ate her sandwich. She didn't realize that Mrs. Rodriguez was sitting at the teacher's table nearby, grading papers. "Excuse me, Maya." Maya looked up, startled. Mrs. Rodriguez was a young Latina woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. "I couldn't help but notice you humming. That was Pachelbel's canon, wasn't it?" Maya's eyes widened. Someone had recognized her humming. Someone knew what she was humming. "I don't know what it's called. I heard it on my grandmother's radio." Mrs. Rodriguez sat down across from Maya. "Your grandmother has good taste. Do you like classical music?"
I love it.
Maya said, and for the first time in weeks, she smiled. "My grandmother used to say it was the sound of freedom." "Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman. Do you play any instruments?" Maya's face fell. "No. I tried to play piano once, but..." She trailed off, not wanting to get into trouble. Mrs. Rodriguez seemed to understand. "Would you like to learn?" Maya's heart started racing. "More than anything, but my foster parents say it's not practical for someone like me." Something flashed in Mrs. Rodriguez's eyes. Anger, maybe, or sadness. "Maya, would you like to come to my music room after school? I could teach you some basics. Just between us." And so began Maya's secret musical education. Every day after school, instead of going straight home, Maya would spend an hour in Mrs. Rodriguez's music room. They started with basic theory, how to read notes, understand rhythm, recognize different keys. But Maya absorbed everything so quickly that Mrs. Rodriguez was amazed. "Maya, you have perfect pitch," she said one afternoon. "Do you know how rare that is? Some of the greatest musicians in the world don't have perfect pitch." "What does that mean?" Maya asked. "It means you can identify any note just by hearing it. It means music comes to you as naturally as breathing." Within 2 weeks, Maya was playing simple songs on the classroom keyboard. Within a month, she was playing complex pieces that should have taken years to master.
Mrs. Rodriguez was stunned.
"Maya, I've been teaching music for 15 years, and I've never seen anything like this. You're not just talented, you're gifted, extraordinarily gifted." But keeping the secret was becoming harder. Maya would come home from her music lessons with her eyes bright and her heart full, only to be met with the Hendersons' disapproving stares. "Maya, you've been coming home late from school," Patricia observed one evening. "Where have you been?" "Just staying after to finish homework," Maya lied, hating herself for it. "Well, make sure you come straight home from now on. We worry when we don't know where you are." The lie sat heavy in Maya's stomach, but she couldn't give up her music lessons. They were the only thing that made her feel alive, the only thing that connected her to her grandmother's memory. Everything came to a head on a rainy Thursday in April. Maya was in Mrs. Rodriguez's music room, playing a piece by Chopin, the same nocturne her grandmother had loved. Her fingers moved across the keys with a fluidity and emotion that brought tears to Mrs. Rodriguez's eyes. She was so absorbed in the music that she didn't hear the door open. "Maya Elizabeth Johnson, what exactly do you think you're doing?" Patricia Henderson stood in the doorway, her face flushed with anger. Behind her stood Richard, his jaw clenched tight. Maya's hands froze on the keys. "Mrs. Henderson, don't you dare try to explain this," Patricia snapped. She turned to Mrs. Rodriguez. "I don't know what you think you're doing, encouraging this child in this foolishness, but it stops now." Mrs. Rodriguez stood up, her own anger beginning to show. "Mrs. Henderson, with all due respect, Maya's extraordinarily talented. She has a gift that..." "She has responsibilities," Richard interrupted, "and wasting time on this nonsense isn't one of them. Maya, get your things. We're going home." But Mrs. Rodriguez was just... "Now, Maya." As they walked to the car, Patricia's voice was cold. "We are very disappointed in you, Maya. Lying to us, sneaking around behind our backs, wasting time that should be spent on your studies." "But I was studying," Maya said desperately. "Music is studying too, and I'm good at it. Mrs. Rodriguez says I'm gifted." Richard started the car with more force than necessary. Maya, let me explain something to you. We've been fostering children for years. We know what's best, and what's best for you is to focus on practical skills that will help you in the real world. Music is a fantasy. It's not realistic for someone in your position. What position? Maya asked, though she was beginning to understand what they really meant. You're a foster child, Maya. You need to be practical. You need to prepare for a life where you'll have to work hard just to get by. Music is a luxury that people like you simply can't afford. People like you? There it was again, the phrase that made Maya's stomach twist with shame and anger. That night, Maya was grounded for 2 weeks. No after-school activities, no television, no radio. She had to come straight home and go directly to her room. But as she lay in bed that night, something had changed inside her. The music in her heart wasn't getting quieter, it was getting louder, and she realized that the Hendersons' words weren't just hurtful. They were wrong. The breaking point came during Maya's 8th birthday. The Hendersons had organized a small party, just the 3 of them, and a store-bought cake. Patricia had given her a set of school supplies and a book about practical career choices for young women. Maya thanked them politely, but inside her heart was breaking. She kept thinking about how her grandmother would have celebrated her birthday, with music and stories and dreams about Maya's bright future. After the cake was cut and the dishes were washed, Maya went to her room and did something she hadn't done since her grandmother's funeral. She cried. She cried for the music lessons she was missing, for the piano that sat silent downstairs, for the grandmother who would never hear her play. But most of all, she cried because she was beginning to believe what the Hendersons kept telling her, that her dreams weren't realistic, that music wasn't for someone like her. The next morning, Maya was unusually quiet at breakfast.
Maya, are you feeling all right? Patricia asked.
I want to ask you something, Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. What is it, honey? Why don't you think I can be a musician? Richard and Patricia exchanged a look. Maya. We've explained this, Richard said patiently. It's not that we don't think you can be a musician. It's that we want you to be realistic about your chances of success. But what if I'm really good? What if I could be great? Patricia sighed. Maya, sweetheart, there are thousands of children who think they want to be musicians. Very few of them make it, and the ones who do usually come from families with money, with connections, with resources. They have advantages that you simply don't have. What advantages? Well, expensive instruments, private lessons from a young age, parents who can support them financially while they pursue their dreams. Maya, we're not trying to be cruel. We're trying to protect you from disappointment. But Mrs. Rodriguez says, Mrs. Rodriguez is being kind, Richard interrupted. But kindness isn't the same as honesty. Maya, I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to really listen. The music world is very competitive, and frankly, very white. The opportunities for someone like you are limited. We don't want you to waste years chasing a dream that will only lead to heartbreak. Someone like you, again. Maya looked down at her cereal, her appetite completely gone. Maya, do you understand what we're trying to tell you? Patricia asked gently. Maya nodded, but inside, something was crystallizing. The Hendersons weren't just discouraging her from music because it was impractical. They were discouraging her because she was black, because she was a foster child, because in their minds, music was for other people, white people, wealthy people, people with advantages. That afternoon, while the Hendersons were at the grocery store, Maya did something that would change the course of her life. She called Mrs. Rodriguez. Mrs. Rodriguez? It's Maya. Can you come pick me up? I need to show you something. 30 minutes later, Mrs. Rodriguez arrived at the Henderson house. Maya led her to the living room, to the beautiful baby grand piano that had been sitting silent for months. Maya, are you sure about this? Mrs. Rodriguez asked. I'm sure, Maya said, and for the first time in weeks her voice was strong. Maya sat down at the piano bench, placed her fingers on the keys, and began to play. What came out was not the simple melodies she'd been learning in music class. What came out was pure emotion, all the pain and longing and hope that had been building inside her for months. She played her grandmother's favorite nocturne, but she played it with her own interpretation, her own pain, her own dreams. When she finished, Mrs. Rodriguez was crying. Maya, that was extraordinary. Where did that come from? From here, Maya said, putting her hand over her heart. Mrs. Rodriguez, I know what the Hendersons think about me, but I also know something else. This music, It's not going away. It's getting stronger. And I think my grandmother was right. I think this is my freedom." Mrs. Rodriguez wiped her eyes. "Maya, I need to tell you something. I've been teaching for 15 years and I've had exactly 3 students who I thought had the potential to be truly great musicians. You're one of them." "Really?" "Really, but Maya, if you want to pursue this, you're gonna have to be braver than any 8-year-old should have to be. Are you ready for that?" Maya thought about her grandmother, about the music that lived in her heart, about the word noise and the phrase "someone like you." "Yes," she said, "I'm ready." Mrs. Rodriguez had an idea that was so audacious, so impossible, that it just might work. "Maya, there's a program I want you to audition for. It's called the Chicago Youth Music Initiative. They provide full scholarships to exceptionally talented young musicians. The program includes private lessons, performance opportunities, and eventually the chance to audition for some of the best music schools in the country." Maya's eyes widened. "But what about the Hendersons?" "They'll never let me." Mrs. Rodriguez's expression grew serious. "Maya, I'm going to ask you to trust me, but I need you to know that this might mean some difficult changes in your life. Are you prepared for that?" Maya thought about the cold silence in the Henderson house, about the word noise, about dreams that were considered unrealistic for someone like her. "Yes," she said, "I'm prepared." Mrs. Rodriguez made some phone calls. The next week, Maya found herself at the Chicago Conservatory of Music, sitting at a grand piano in front of 3 judges. Her hands shook as she began to play. But as soon as the music started, the fear melted away. She played Chopin, she played Mozart, she played Bach. But more than that, she played her own story, the story of a little girl who refused to let anyone silence her song. When she finished, the room was completely silent. Finally, one of the judges spoke. "Young lady, how long have you been playing piano?" "About 6 months," Maya said quietly. The 3 judges looked at each other in amazement. "Maya, would you be interested in joining our program?" "Yes, ma'am. More than anything." "Excellent. We'll need to speak with your guardians about the requirements." "That might be a problem," Mrs. Rodriguez interrupted gently. And that's when the real fight began. When Mrs. Rodriguez called the Hendersons to tell them about Maya's acceptance into the music program, their reaction was exactly what she'd expected. "Absolutely not," Richard said firmly. "We've already discussed this. Maya needs to focus on practical skills, not chase impossible dreams." "Mr. Henderson, with respect, Maya is extraordinarily gifted. This program could change her life." "Her life doesn't need changing," Patricia added. "It needs stability and realistic expectation." Mrs. Rodriguez took a deep breath. "I'm going to ask you to reconsider. Maya has a once-in-a-generation talent. To waste that would be, well, it would be tragic." "What would be tragic," Richard said, his voice getting cold, "is filling a child's head with unrealistic expectations and setting her up for failure. We know what's best for Maya." That night, Maya heard the Hendersons talking in the kitchen. "I think we need to request a transfer," Patricia was saying. "Maya is becoming too difficult to manage. This music obsession is disruptive to our household." "Maybe you're right," Richard agreed. "We've tried our best, but some children just can't be helped." Maya felt something break inside her chest, but it wasn't her spirit breaking, it was her fear breaking. She realized that she would rather be anywhere else in the world than in a house where her dreams were called noise and her talent was called unrealistic. The next morning, Maya called Mrs. Patterson, her social worker. "Mrs. Patterson, it's Maya Johnson. I need to tell you something important." 6 months later, Maya Johnson stood on the stage of Carnegie Hall. She was no longer living with the Hendersons. Mrs. Patterson had found her a new foster family, the Williams family, a black couple who had been musicians themselves in their youth, and understood the fire that burned in Maya's heart. The Chicago Youth Music Initiative had fast-tracked Maya's development. Her new piano teacher, Dr. Sarah Chen, was amazed by Maya's progress. "In 30 years of teaching, I've never seen anything like it," Dr. Chen told Maya's new foster parents. "She doesn't just play music, she inhabits it, she becomes it." Maya had been selected to perform at Carnegie Hall as part of a young artist showcase. At 8 years old, she was the youngest performer in the program's history. As she walked onto the stage, Maya thought about her grandmother. She thought about Mrs. Rodriguez, who had believed in her when no one else would. She thought about the Williams family, who had welcomed her music into their home, like a long-lost song finally returning. And yes, she thought about the Hendersons. They were in the audience tonight. Mrs. Patterson had called them. thinking they might want to see Maya perform. Patricia and Richard Henderson sat in the third row, their faces unreadable. Maya sat down at the piano, a magnificent Steinway grand that gleamed under the stage lights. She placed her fingers on the keys and thought about all the hands that had tried to silence her music, all the voices that had called her dreams noise. She began to play Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, her grandmother's favorite. But she didn't play it the way it was written. She played it the way it lived in her heart, with all the pain of loss, all the joy of dreams realized, all the power of a voice that refused to be silenced. As the music filled Carnegie Hall, something magical happened. The audience didn't just listen to the music, they felt it. They felt Maya's journey, her struggle, her triumph. In the third row, Patricia Henderson began to cry, quietly at first, then openly. Richard reached for her hand, his own eyes filled with tears. When Maya finished playing, the audience rose to their feet in thunderous applause. But Maya was looking at only two faces in the crowd, the Hendersons, who were clapping through their tears. After the performance, Patricia and Richard waited by the stage door. "Maya," Patricia said, when she saw her, "we never knew." Maya looked at them with the wisdom of a child who had learned to fight for her dreams. "Mrs. Henderson," she said gently, "music was never noise. It was always my voice, and now the whole world can hear it." Richard stepped forward, his voice breaking. "Maya, we owe you an apology. We were wrong. We were so wrong." Maya nodded. "I forgive you," she said simply, "but I hope you'll remember my story the next time you meet a child with big dreams. Because dreams aren't unrealistic just because they're big. They're only unrealistic if no one believes in them." As Maya walked away with her new family, she carried with her the sound of her grandmother's voice. "That's the sound of freedom, baby girl." And finally, Maya was free. Today, Maya Johnson is studying at Juilliard on a full scholarship. She has performed with major orchestras around the world. But more importantly, she has started a foundation that provides musical instruments and lessons to foster children because she believes that every child deserves the chance to find their voice. The piano at the Henderson house still sits in their living room, but now, every time they look at it, they remember the little girl whose dreams they tried to silence, and they remember the most important lesson. Maya taught them that talent doesn't care about the color of your skin, the size of your bank account, or where you come from. Talent only cares about one thing, whether you're brave enough to let it sing. And sometimes, just sometimes, that song can change the world.